these projects, because if they're winners of Bid Angels, they got to be good projects. I'll just say quickly, I would like to try to convert more Bitcoin maximalists that are toxic to being what I have been. And I coined this like 7, 8 years ago, but Bitcoin maximalish. I love Bitcoin, but there's lots of other great stuff out there that we should be looking at and experimenting with. And we shouldn't be like, you know, slapping someone's hand every time they look at something else. I don't think that's a good thing. It's like the boyfriend who is like ultra, protective over his girlfriend. She inevitably is gonna leave, when guys come and hit on Cindy in a bar, I laugh and I just go along with it and I just pretend I'm not her boyfriend, because I think it's funny. But anyways,
Exactly. These things will ultimately unlock Bitcoin's expressiveness. That's the irony to me, is all of these things and the open source development that's happening. It's, guys, you want privacy, you want fungibility, you want speed and scalability. My thesis is Bitcoin, it's 60 to 80% of global value. It's like you said, Rock, if you have $1 million in your bank account, but you're going out for date night, you don't need all that cash in your wallet. You don't bring $1 million. You take a piece, move it over into your hot wallet.
I don't know, man. You haven't met Cindy yet. She's expensive. Just kidding.
I cede the floor. I'm rambling too much. Such a cool conversation.
Cool. And Litecoin, I do agree with you. Cool stuff happening. There's now like Litecoin ETFs happening with Luxfolio, LitVM, which we're actually incubating, which was actually a winner of Bid Angels, is a new Litecoin layer 2 using ZK rollups that Litecoin Foundation and Charlie Lee are supporting. Now, Coinbase just came out with their CBLTC, which is interesting. Okay, enough. We got to stop. We got to stop the side rants. Let's get to these projects. I'm really excited to hear about them. So let's start. I'm just going to randomly start with, let's do Trustware, and then Trustware first. So tell us which Bid Angels, because there was 3 in the last 7 days. One at New York Permissionless, and there was a couple others. Which one did you win?
Hey, so we were just at the Bid Angels New York, but honestly, I've spoken a little bit in this. I would love to pass the mic, and I'm happy to go second or last. I just want to make sure that.
Oh, how polite!
Yeah. So,
this is the beauty of Bid Angels.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trustware. That's super cool. Okay, Tokenopoly HQ. Looks like it says you're changing the game of real estate forever as your bio. Which event were you at? What did you place? And tell us what you do.
Hi there.
You could give us whatever. Yeah, go on, whatever amount of time you want. We'll try not to go too long, but maybe a few minutes, and then we can ask some questions and then make it a kind of dynamic conversation. We'll have the audience in the comments also can ask questions, and then panelists can ask questions. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Farhan Memon. I'm the co-founder of Tokenopoly, and we were at the Bid Angels Pitch Fest.
I'm so sorry. Do you have maybe a different mic? Is that bad for other people? It's not super terrible, but it's not great. It's a little weird.
Let me switch. Hold on.
You could try speakerphone is usually the best, but whatever you want to switch to.
Give me a second here.
While he's doing that, everybody give these projects a follow. If you don't like what they say, you could unfollow them after. Just kidding. But give everybody up here a follow. These are good people to learn from. Sterling has some really incredible. I mean, I love his philosophical writings and discussions. Anthem, same thing. Warren is a wealth of knowledge, not just from crypto but other industries. Wrote a book on Twitter early on. 16 years ago or something. Give everyone a follow, and then let's try again.
Brock, can you hear me now? Is this better?
I think it's better. Not at first, but now I think you're next. Say something again.
I think it's really a question of my bandwidth here. It's been pretty all day long.
Now. It's better. It's better.
Now.
All right. Better now.
Great. Well, I was going to say my name's Farhan Memon. I'm the co-founder of Tokenopoly. We were at the Bid Angels event in New York on Monday, and we came in first place. So kudos to all my other co-presenters, but I think we walked away with the prize of the night. And so thank you all for having us here in this forum this afternoon. So maybe what I'll do is I'll take a couple of minutes to talk about what Tokenopoly is and the problem that we're trying to solve. And then, by all means, the floor is open to questions, and I'll be happy to sort of answer them and shed a little bit more light on what we're doing. So, the issue here is that real estate's a $35 trillion market, but it's locked behind a lot of barriers, right? You need a lot of money to buy a house. The transactions take a long time to close. There's lots of legal stuff to do, but crypto users want things fast. They want borderless exposure to real world assets, but most RWA plays are illiquid and they're deed based. So what we're doing at Tokenopoly is we're offering a synthetic real estate token that's not tied to deeds, but it mirrors US real estate home prices through oracles and crypto collaterals. There aren't any landlords, there aren't any mortgages. There's just real estate exposure that you can access for as little as $100 and trade it like an ETH or Bitcoin token. So what we're doing is we're taking any house in the United States and someone is minting that house to turn it into 10,000 tokens. And then the next person is coming along and they're collateralizing one of those tokens. So let's say, for example, that the house is worth $1 million. Each token would be worth $100. The price is determined by what's called an automated value model, so like Zillow, for example, or there are many other white label providers. So with each token being worth $100, there's someone who's collateralizing it at a rate of 1.5 to 1. So $150 is being put into a smart contract. And then the token trades at par with the Zillow price. So when Zillow goes up, the token goes up. And when Zillow goes down, the token goes down. And in this way, you're exposed to the price of a house without actually physically owning the house. In fact, nobody owns the house. We're just taking publicly available information like the price of the house, its location, the fact that, it has an estimate, and we're, playing off of that. So in doing this, we're basically providing exposure at scale. You could combine houses together to form a local index. So for example, if you didn't want to buy a house, you could basically buy a neighborhood token. So you could play off Brooklyn against Inglewood or some area in Detroit. And this is basically democratizing real estate, because real estate really is at the core of middle-class wealth creation in this country. And now, for a lot of people who are in Gen Z or millennials, they're not really able to get into the real estate game. And if you can't enter at the ground floor, then you're basically locked out. You're behind the 8 ball for life renting. So we're not necessarily putting people in a home, but if people want something as a hedge against housing inflation, this becomes an asset that they can buy and hold and then cash in as housing prices go up and down, depending on where they are. So that's basically what we're doing.
What is housing inflation? You mean just the price of houses going up?
Correct. In fact, there's really what started me off on this journey is I read an academic paper by Robert Shiller. Professor Shiller is at Yale. He's retired now, but he's a Nobel Prize winning professor and the person behind the Case-Shiller Price Index for homes. And he basically said that, if you are a young family and you're starting off your life together and you want to save for a home, socking money away in a bank account is not necessarily the most efficient way. You need something that's going to basically keep pace with the cost of housing in the area that you're trying to buy a home in. And so you need some sort of derivative product that helps you, keep in sync with home prices. Home inflation is what he called it. So that's sort of what we're doing. And that sort of lit off the light bulb in my mind, because I was doing a lot of work around crypto and crypto risk. And whenever I would go to conferences, people would talk about, well, what's the utility of crypto beyond just, currency speculation? And in my mind, this was a way to solve a problem. The problem being that Gen Z and, millennials were being priced out of the market in order to get a toehold to that escalator that is middle class wealth in this country.
So interesting concept. What made you decide to go synthetic versus actually backed by the like tokenizing the properties?
So there are a lot of projects like Realty and others that actually take a real property, like a physical property. They buy it, or either in whole or get a mortgage, and they put it into an LLC, and they fractionalize that. And that's fine, and that's been an interesting project for some, but it doesn't really scale, right? That's like what I would call the crypto version of a REIT, depending on how many properties that sort of entity owns or tokenizes. It turns out, according to Professor Schiller's research, that REITs don't actually mirror the real estate market; they mirror more the stock market. So both for scalability purposes and actually getting exposure to the price of real estate, either individually in a house or in a neighborhood or a city, I think that our project better reflects that type of thesis.
And what makes it hold its peg against these things? What are the risks? Any black swan events that could happen? Why would people want to hold a paper, synthetic asset that reflects the price of these things? And how does it hold value?
Well, at the core of what we're doing is the AVM, or the automated value model, right? So things like Zillow, for example, are being used. Obviously, Zillow is more for sort of entertainment purposes for a lot of people, checking out how much is my neighbor's house worth or how much is my friend's house worth. But it turns out that these AVMs are actually used by mortgage companies and by insurance companies in their business. So AVMs are pretty accurate when it comes to thinking about the price of a house. So it turns out, in our minds at least, that you don't really need to physically own the house to be able to benefit from its price valuation, right? I mean, think about a house. You live in it, so there's utility value. There may be income value if you're renting it. But if all you're interested in doing is benefiting from its price appreciation or depreciation over a certain period of time, you really don't need physical possession of the house. And so if AVMs are generally acceptable in insurance and the mortgage lending industry as a true value of a house, that should be, pretty much solid and acceptable in terms of what we're doing as well.
I maybe you can help me understand better. So I think I don't know what these things are. So, but those, do they hold value or do they just say what the value of something is? Like, right? CoinMarketCap can tell me the value of a Bitcoin, but it doesn't mean that I can make paper Bitcoin synthetic shares and that people will trade those.
Well, I mean, oracles are used to provide third-party estimates of what certain assets are worth, right? So if an oracle told you that the price of Bitcoin today was 107,000, you wouldn't necessarily need to hold Bitcoin as long as you were able to capture the value of Bitcoin in some other way. So if someone gave you $107,000 in some contract and told you, okay, this contract is going to represent a Bitcoin, I don't think that you care much whether you actually have a Bitcoin or you don't have a Bitcoin, as long as you have $107,000 locked and you can have some claim on that $107,000. So our thesis is that as long as you capture the value and as long as there's some third party providing you with mark-to-market data on how much that asset is worth, then you don't really care whether you hold value or not, or hold the asset or not. In the case of real estate, which is not a virtual asset, it actually then makes the holding of that virtualized version of real estate much more accessible to people, and also lowers the barriers in terms of the liquidity of that asset, right? So you know that when you buy a home, it takes months to close. When you try and sell a home, you have to find a buyer. But when you make it virtual, when you make it synthetic, those barriers completely melt away. I could buy a coin today of a certain property and I could sell it the very next minute and at lower costs in terms of real estate commissions than I'm able to do today. And so,
Well, certainly, if you have two different, let's compare two I mean, so okay, I'm trying to poke some holes, and
yeah,
that's what we should always do
poke
as
away.
investors. But yeah, but in reality, we know that in the traditional finance world, these products are very common, right? There's all kinds of synthetic, derivative, all kinds of different products. Um, that you don't settle in the underlying. Now, some you do. Like one of actually the first U.S. ETF that was approved for Bitcoin did not settle in the underlying. I don't even. Did they hold the underlying? Was it CME? Does anyone remember? It's been a long time now in
I
crypto
believe it
years.
was just price tracking.
Yes, that would make sense. I mean, it's not ideal, and crypto people didn't. They preferred to have the underlying asset because we're an idealistic industry, and it's not just we want exposure to the asset price fluctuations, but we also want to hold the thing. I imagine a lot of people in real estate are like that, but there's plenty of products for them. So I'm sure there is a category of people who would love to have something like this. That, and by the way, think so. I'm playing devil's advocate both sides here, but like if you have two companies, one company goes out and buys real estate and has to buy the physical real estate, have the insurance on the real estate, has to rent it out to people or do whatever with it, and now has much more regulatory probably obligations, I would think. Now, how much is it going to cost to maintain that ETF or fund or whatever the vehicle is, versus if you have a way that's reliable, and that's the key. Is it, how do we know it's reliable? But if you could reliably have a synthetic version of it, obviously the management costs go down to nothing, almost very low. Or compared to actually holding the asset itself, like gold costs a lot of money to. We're considering incubating a gold backed asset company right now, token. And they were showing us like their biggest cost is the custody of the gold. And so yeah, there's a reason that in TradFi, and I don't follow these products as much, but I used to. I can't remember so well, but there's definitely tons of synthetic and like paper things that don't settle in the real asset. I mean, this is what kind of futures and a lot of these things, options, probably more options than futures, because futures sometimes are settled in the real asset. But anyways, yeah, interesting.
I think it also helps actually in price discovery of the real asset. Remember, you know, real estate physically is what I would call a low velocity asset, right? When you have a house or a piece of physical property, it sort of changes hands very slowly over years, if you will. But with this, what you actually are able to do now is price discovery much more efficiently. Because if the token that you've created synthetically is trading and there's demand for that token, in other words, it's going up in value in conjunction with the AVM, then that's probably an indication that the actual value of the house is going up as well. Or conversely, if it's going down. So not only do you, in our sort of project, realize the sort of benefits of democratizing ownership of real estate, at least in terms of its exposure to the pricing. You create liquidity for these illiquid investments because they trade over much faster than in the real world. But you're also getting a much better sense of how much the asset is really worth, because the only time you truly know when real estate is worth is if it physically changes hands. Beyond that, you're reliant on the AVMs, but now you're also going to be able to get a signal from the trading of our token to say, is this property worth more? Is it worth less? And I think that just makes the market dynamics a whole lot more transparent for everyone.
Okay, I'm gonna give some like I guess negatives and positives. If I'll pause against this, like Bitcoin, I don't want a paper Bitcoin. I also don't want people instead of buying real Bitcoin, which we all want everyone to buy real Bitcoin because when we all buy it goes up, or any of these like crypto native assets. But something like houses, I would argue the monetization and financialization of the housing market has been a negative for society because it drives up the cost of houses. And now, because so many people are buying houses as speculative assets, that it's harder for someone to just buy a house to live in. That is actually a real, in my opinion, I don't know. The free market says it's fair, so it's fair, but it's kind of a negative. And if we could detach the monetization of real estate, and one of the ways I think this will happen is I think Bitcoin and other things will become better monetary vehicles, and a lot will absorb a lot of the monetary premium of real estate, fine art, and other things. And so, if people use a product like this, I'm trying to think of like why I would be against it or for it, and I guess I would be less against a synthetic thing or more for it. I have to think this through more, but because it would make it so that speculators who want access or exposure to real estate don't have to buy up real estate that people should be buying to live in ideally. So that's definitely a positive, but maybe I'm wrong. Someone want to tell me if I'm wrong, or what are your thoughts on that, Tokenopoly?
Well, I think what you see right now is you see companies like BlackRock, buying millions and millions of dollars of worth of physical real estate, right, for their income value. And I guess you could,
Billions, yeah.
argue that there needs to be more affordable housing stock in the United States, and that that may be not such a great thing for REITs and investment companies like BlackRock to be doing that. Um, so I think that's more of a public policy question, I think, um, versus us being able to give people that exposure, so that you think about the risks that they're taking in other assets, right? So the safest asset, of course, is you stick your money in a T-bill or in a CD and you just earn sort of passive interest. But that's not going to be enough when the underlying asset is going up by 8% every year. So obviously in every type of trade, there's a party that's going long and a party that's going short. So in this sense, in our project, the people that are buying the property token are going long. They're hoping that the property that they're buying is going to increase in value so that they will be able to cash out and then use their money for whatever they want to be doing, go on vacation, or actually put it towards a down payment of a real house. On the other side, people who are staking are bearish on either the neighborhood token or on the actual physical house itself. And so, again, we're injecting efficiency into the market, providing the market with an additional signal, allowing people to gain exposure. So it sort of is beneficial in a number of different ways. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. And also, I would say that as we try and create sort of the crypto economy and bring it into the mainstream, normies need something that they can sort of wrap their minds around, right? I mean, if all crypto is going to do is be sort of 10% of the population, that's not going to make the pie grow any bigger. So I think that, we all grew up playing Monopoly in our, parents' basements, in our rooms with our sisters, brothers, cousins, whatever. People like the idea of property. People like the idea that, we have a president, well, some people do, I guess, who's a real estate mogul, right? So our minds are very much attuned to the idea of housing and property being a natural part of our lives. And so if we can use this as a vehicle to get people excited about owning digital assets, then I think that that's a net positive thing for our entire industry. Our head of growth, Mushker Moin, who was actually the person that presented on a Monday night, had this sort of thought concept of could you give a house as a gift card to someone? So you go, instead of giving them an Amazon card, you could give them he called it a stake in the future. A little gift card with a house on the cover of it. So I think, these types of things actually sort of ignite the imagination, make it a little bit more fun. You could gamify it a little bit by creating leaderboards and a gallery for people to show off the properties that they own. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you could play this that help make it more interesting for the entire community that rallies around it. One of the other things that we're thinking of is that when people buy houses and mint these houses, and of course are paying us a small fee to do so, that we're taking a portion of that fee and putting it into a community development fund. So that maybe the people who own our token or who are participating in the project can then decide, to take some of that money that's in the community development fund and actually use it in the community to build a playground or to help in some other way in, giving people sort of public goods and things like that. So I think for myself, as I was sitting in my day job thinking about this stuff, it made it like more exciting. It certainly brought utility in my mind to crypto, and also there are some benefits that spin off of it too.
I've got to break in here because I don't want to miss the opportunity to tell Rock I disagree with him and where he's wrong. Because, before we
Let's
forget,
go.
hey, you went on about Argentina and how housing is so much better since the government got out of the way on a lot of stuff and let the free market reign. That's what we need to do here. The problem we have is not that suddenly the housing prices are too high and we all ought to do something that we should do. That's socialist thinking. What we really need is to let the market reign free, go ahead and build all the housing we need. And it's the same problem when I was a kid. I thought I wasn't going to be able to buy a house, and I made it to like 22 before I bought a house. Um, but if you'd asked me a couple of months earlier, I'd say, I don't know that it's possible. In my case, I was able to buy something cheap and do a renovation. But many others go ahead and get a gift from somebody. And I know the last time one of my kids bought a house and had to prove where the money was coming from, he was allowed to take a gift to buy a house, but he needed to document that it was from me. And actually, he'd had a rich friend that had backed him at 0% interest to borrow whatever he wanted and had made the agreement to get the loan. So the deal was superb. And I liked it because I didn't write a check, but but I had to go to the escrow for the mortgage or whatever and provide letters and sign extra paperwork to say that it was coming because he had tried to take a gift from somebody else. That's just a little thing about how screwed up the market is. When we try to build, all the regulations we have against builders, all the local municipality, regional governments, and state governments that have, try to put their hand out and take part of whatever has happened. I mean, even back in the 80s when we were discussing this, we were looking at like $50,000 per lot to pay government fees, and some of that's good. They need to have schools and whatnot. Doing things this way, it was something that somebody put forth even back then as a creative way to do real estate. Anybody that's, paid their rent on time for a year is a good enough credit risk that you can give them some kind of equity if they'll participate. They're going to take better care of the property. They're going to act like an owner, and you're going to be able to go in with, instead of paying the bank, you pay less for a mortgage payment and end up it going right to the investor. And we just didn't have the vehicles for it back then. Now we do. So I think this is a fantastic project. And yeah,
That was
Rock.
really amazing.
Yeah, Rock, you're wrong.
Warren, we got
Thanks, Warren. I
Trustware.
appreciate it.
Hey
What's up,
guys,
Amber?
Rock and Warren. We have Trustware on. They wanted a chance to speak because they actually have to go soon. So is that okay to have
Okay.
them up?